If you are a woman over 50, I want you to take a breath and truly listen, because what I'm about to say may shift the way you see yourself, your body, and the intimacy in your marriage. Many women don't realize this, but the way you express affection after midlife, including the tender private acts most people only whisper about, quietly shapes the emotional heartbeat of your relationship. In fact, women who still enjoy giving pleasure to their husbands, not out of obligation, but out of love and confidence, often experience something surprising. They feel more emotionally connected, more secure in themselves, and more fulfilled as women. And I want to make something very clear from the beginning. This is not about being 20 again. This is not about performance pressure or doing anything extreme. This is about the meaning behind the touch, the trust behind the moment, the freedom that comes from loving vulnerably without shame, without fear, without the old stories that told women to hold back. I am Dr. Lisa Perriera, a board-certified gynecologist with more than 30 years of experience caring for women moving through menopause, hormonal shifts, emotional changes, and the evolving intimacy that comes with life after 50. I have listened to thousands of women from all across the United States tell me their fears, their questions, their longing, and the quiet doubts they rarely share with anyone else. Here is what I want you to know. Passion doesn't disappear because of age. Connection doesn't vanish because of menopause. Desire doesn't evaporate just because life became busy or your body changed. Intimacy fades only when we stop talking about pleasure, when we stop exploring, and when we stop believing we are still worthy of being touched, wanted, and adored. But I have seen again and again that love after 50 can burn warmer, softer, deeper, and far more honestly than love ever did at 30. When shame falls away, and a woman begins to own her sensuality with wisdom and confidence, everything in her relationship shifts. Before we go deeper, I would love to know something personal from you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Women from Texas, California, New York, Florida, Australia, Canada, and the UK gather here every day. Knowing your city helps me guide the conversations that matter most to you. Now let's begin where almost every woman's story truly starts, not with hormones, not with technique, but with something more human and far more common than most of us admit. The quiet loneliness that settles into long-term relationships, even when you love the man lying right beside you. There is a particular kind of loneliness many women over 50 carry, even when they are not alone at all. It is not the loneliness of an empty house or an absent partner. It is the loneliness of feeling unseen. I have heard this quiet ache in the voices of women from every corner of the country. They sit in my office smiling politely, describing their marriage as stable, their health as normal, their routines as predictable. But underneath that composure, there is often a deeper story they hesitate to tell. It is the story of a woman who no longer feels admired, a woman who no longer feels desired, a woman who no longer feels like her body is invited into closeness, only into responsibility. After midlife, life shifts. Conversations revolve around grandchildren, retirement plans, medical appointments, the next appointment on the calendar. Doctors talk about cholesterol, blood pressure, bone density. Friends talk about caregiving aches and the latest news. Almost no one asks a woman, do you still want to feel touched? Do you miss feeling wanted? Do you ever long for connection that goes beyond conversation? And so the silence grows. For some women, the mirror becomes harder to look at. Not because they dislike who they are, but because they no longer see the spark they once recognized. For others, the bedroom becomes a space for sleep, but no longer a space for warmth. And the hardest part isn't the loss of youth. It is the loss of emotional closeness. The loss of feeling chosen. What hurts women most rarely comes from age. It comes from the sinking fear that their sensuality has expired, that their desirability has faded, that their marriage has settled into something functional instead of something alive. This loneliness does not announce itself with dramatic tears. It slips in quietly through routine, through unspoken assumptions, through nights when you turn off the light and roll to opposite sides of the bed, not because you want distance, but because neither of you knows how to reach across the space anymore. And maybe you've whispered to yourself, "Is this all that is left for us?" If that thought has ever crossed your mind, let me reassure you. No, this is not all. You are not too old. Your marriage is not past saving. Your desire has not disappeared. It has simply been waiting for something more meaningful than what routine has allowed. One of my patients in her early 60s told me, "Lisa, I don't think my husband even notices me anymore." But when I asked if she still reached for him, even in small ways, a brush of the hand, a lingering hug, a soft kiss, she admitted I stopped trying. Not because she didn't love him, but because she didn't know how to start again without feeling rejected or foolish. What we discovered together is that intimacy had not died. It had gone quiet. It was waiting for tenderness, not perfection. Waiting for presence, not performance. Waiting for one person to take a gentle step so the other could follow. And this is where the way a woman expresses affection, even the kinds of affection no one talks about, becomes powerful. Not for the act itself, but for the emotional message behind it. When a woman reaches out with kindness, with curiosity, or with desire, she is saying, "I still see you, and I want to feel close to you again." That single message can reopen doors that seemed shut for years. But to fully understand why this kind of giving matters so much, we need to look at what intimacy truly means beyond the physical moment. Because the meaning is deeper, richer, and far more important than most women realize. I will never forget a woman in her late 50s who sat across from me, twisting her wedding ring nervously. She lowered her voice and said, "Lisa, is it strange that I still enjoy giving pleasure to my husband?" She spoke as if admitting something improper, something she wasn't sure she was allowed to feel anymore. What she wanted wasn't permission for a physical act. She wanted reassurance that her desire to give was still valid, still feminine, still hers. I told her something I want you to hear as well. There is nothing inappropriate or childish about enjoying the act of giving pleasure to a man you love. When done with trust, affection, and freedom, it becomes one of the purest expressions of emotional generosity a woman can offer. It's not about technique or performance. It's about presence. It's about saying through touch what words sometimes fail to capture. You matter to me. I still choose you. I still feel alive in this connection. And here is where science and emotion meet in a remarkable way. When you give affection, even if you are not the one receiving direct stimulation, your brain still releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that deepens connection and softens stress. Dopamine rises, bringing a sense of joy and emotional reward. Endorphins help calm anxiety, relax the body, and create a deep sense of closeness. In other words, when you give love, your body receives healing. I've had women tell me I feel more connected after giving than after receiving, and that makes perfect sense. Mature intimacy works differently. It's not about chasing excitement. It's about nurturing the emotional muscle of the relationship. And giving pleasure, whether through a kiss, a gentle touch, or a private act, people rarely say out loud, becomes a way to remind your partner that the bond is still alive. But I want to be very clear. Healthy giving is not sacrifice. It is not obligation. It is not something you do to avoid conflict or because you feel pressured. Intimacy done from fear drains you. Intimacy done from freedom strengthens you. When a woman gives from a place of confidence and choice, she is not losing power. She is stepping into it. She is embracing a version of herself that is wise, sensual, emotionally grounded, and deeply connected to the man she loves. If something brings you genuine satisfaction, it is not wrong. It is real, and it is yours. And something beautiful happens when you approach intimacy from this deeper emotional place. Your body begins to respond again. Even after menopause, even after years of silence, even after you've convinced yourself that those days are over, they aren't over. They are simply waiting for more meaningful invitations. Women often come into my office saying, "My hormones changed, I don't feel desire anymore." But I've learned that desire in midlife doesn't start in the body, it starts in the heart. It builds slowly through emotional safety, through affection, through moments of closeness that tell your body, it's okay to awaken again. And when that awakening begins, intimacy takes on a new texture. It becomes less about urgency and more about connection, less about trying to feel young and more about honoring who you have become. Your body has not forgotten how to feel. It has simply been waiting for intimacy that matches the depth of the woman you are now. And once emotional closeness begins to return, it changes everything about how you express love and how your marriage breathes. To truly understand how powerful this is, we need to explore how intimacy shifts when it matures, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. As relationships move into their later decades, intimacy begins to change its shape. It's no longer fueled by the impulsive excitement of youth. Instead, it becomes something quieter, steadier, and far more meaningful. Mature intimacy isn't about fireworks. It's about presence. It's about the soft moments. Most people overlook the ones that carry more emotional weight than anything dramatic ever could. I once cared for a woman named Diane, 62 years old, who came to me with a heaviness in her heart. She said, "Lisa, I don't think my husband finds me attractive anymore." They had stopped being intimate, not out of anger, but out of habit. Life had settled into patterns, and neither of them knew how to break them. When I asked her to tell me the last time she touched her husband, simply to show affection, not to initiate anything, not with a goal in mind, her face softened. "It's been years," she said, almost in disbelief. I suggested something simple. Not a grand gesture. Not a conversation filled with pressure. Just this. When you sit beside him tonight, rest your hand on his arm for a moment. Nothing more. Just presence. 2 weeks later, she returned with a glow that didn't come from makeup or sleep. She told me, "We didn't plan anything. We just sat together and held each other, and I felt something inside me wake up." That's the beauty of emotional intimacy. It revives the heart long before it revives the body. Touch doesn't have to be sexual to be sensual. Affection doesn't have to be bold to be powerful. Sometimes the gentlest gestures hold the greatest truth. A brush of the hand, a longer hug, a kiss that lingers just a second more than usual. These tiny moments remind your partner that he is still chosen. They remind you that you are still a woman capable of giving and receiving love, not just playing the roles life assigned you. And when it comes to the private acts of pleasure, people rarely discuss openly. Their meaning becomes even more profound. Not because of the act itself, but because of the emotional courage behind it. Giving pleasure can be a way of saying, "I trust you. I feel safe with you. I want to reconnect with you in a way that belongs only to us." Many women don't realize how deeply this can affect a man emotionally. For men in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, intimacy is often tied directly to feeling valued, respected, and bonded. When a woman reaches for him, whether through a kiss, a touch, or even a more intimate gesture, it reassures him in a way words often fail to do. It tells him the marriage still breathes. And here's something even more important. When a woman chooses to give affection freely without shame, without pressure, without feeling like she must perform, she begins to reconnect with her own sensual identity. She stops seeing intimacy as something stressful. It becomes something expressive, nurturing, emotionally grounding. This is why communication matters so much. Not heavy conversations filled with blame, but gentle honesty. A simple "I miss feeling close to you," or "I love when you touch me like this," or "I want us to find each other again." These words soften the distance that silence hardens. Couples who learn to speak openly about affection without fear often rediscover a tenderness they thought they had lost years ago. And that tenderness becomes the foundation for rebuilding physical intimacy naturally, without forcing anything, without chasing something that no longer fits who you are. But the most powerful lessons I've learned about intimacy have come from women who have lived long enough to see love in all its chapters. Their stories hold truths that science can explain, but only age can teach. And one story in particular has stayed with me more than any other. Several years ago, a woman named Eleanor came into my office. She was 78, elegant in the quiet way only a life fully lived can create. She sat down, folded her hands in her lap, and said, "Lisa, I'm not here because anything is wrong. I'm here because I want to give you something." I didn't understand at first. But then she began to tell me her story. Her husband had suffered a major illness that left him weaker, slower, and unable to be intimate the way they once had been. The routines of their life changed drastically. Many couples would have slowly drifted apart in that kind of season, but she didn't let that happen. Every morning she would hold his hand and stroke his face. In the evenings, she would sit beside him and place her head gently on his shoulder. And some nights, when he felt discouraged and less like the strong man he once was, she would give him pleasure in quiet, tender ways, not because she had to, not because he asked, but because she wanted him to feel alive, wanted man enough to still be chosen. It wasn't about sex, she told me, her voice steady. It was about devotion. Then she leaned forward and said something that changed the way I teach intimacy forever. When a woman gives with love, she doesn't lose her power. She multiplies it. I felt those words in my bones because they were true. They still are. So many women fear that giving in intimacy, especially acts rarely spoken of, makes them weak or submissive or somehow less. But Eleanor showed me the opposite. When a woman gives from a place of strength, softness, and choice, her power expands, her confidence expands, her emotional presence deepens. She becomes the heartbeat of the relationship, not by force, but by grace. And modern science quietly supports what Eleanor already knew from experience. Loving touch, even small gestures, lowers blood pressure, improves sleep, calms the nervous system, reduces anxiety, and strengthens emotional resilience. Intimacy literally helps you live longer and remain emotionally younger. But beyond the biology lies the deeper truth. Intimacy after 50 is not about proving anything. It's not about performance. It's not about keeping up with youth. It's about connection, about honesty, about letting yourself feel alive again in a world that often forgets women still have hearts and bodies capable of deep desire. The most profound kind of intimacy is mature intimacy, the kind built on trust, comfort, curiosity, and a quiet courage to stay open even after life has changed your body or your rhythm. And if you've ever wondered whether you're too old to feel desired or sensual again, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not too old. You are not past your time. You are not done with love. Your body remembers. Your heart remembers. Your soul still knows how to give and receive pleasure. And the man who loves you truly loves you is not wishing for the version of you that existed decades ago. He wants the woman who stands before him now, wise, warm, experienced, expressive, and emotionally alive. If this message has spoken to your heart, I would be grateful if you gave this video a like and shared it with another woman who deserves to feel seen. And tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing the beautiful places our community calls home. And before we close today, let me remind you. This video is for educational purposes only. It does not replace medical advice. Every woman's body is unique. If you are experiencing pain, discomfort, or have personal concerns, please consult your healthcare provider. Your well-being deserves personalized care. Thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, love doesn't fade with age. It deepens.